I should tell you my perspective and what I was told to say this morning. Because going round, I'm a bit concerned. I'm a bit concerned because I was told that the opening bit was all about people who didn't know much about project controls. So I was told to give a very foundation level presentation. So I think I'm already in my head trying to work out how I can upscale it. So I'll give it my best shot. But I'm going to talk about from the business perspective. To give you a brief history of me, to skip over the boring speaker slide. I'm the Chief Executive of Maven Training, and that's a company that provides an awful lot of training courses in project, program, risk, change management, but also we do an awful lot of consultancy in project, change, risk management. But my background is actually the head of project and program management for several large organisations. And so I've been a business analyst, I've been a project manager of quite small projects, I've been a project manager of quite large projects, not construction or engineering projects, but more about organisational change projects. I then took on the role of Global Head of Business Continuity and Disaster Recovery, which did bring me into an awful lot of projects related to relocations, building refurbishments, and volcanoes, earthquakes, kidnappings. We had 2 plane crashes, and a few other bits and pieces like that. Nice to know that I didn't lose anybody on my watch, let's be honest. And if you're ever stuck with having to pay a ransom, just put it through as colour printer cartridges. Hi, darling. Do you think I need it? Do you think I need it? I bellow, don't I? Yeah, look at it, yes.
Depends if you want to be on the video like a goldfish without the sound.
Oh, that would be nice, actually. So I must be don't worry.
Just stick in your pockets. Just turn them down a little bit.
Women's suits don't have pockets. Honestly, this is already quite filled. There's nowhere for this. Usually I have somebody sticking it down the front. Anyway, so my perspective is very much the business perspective. My entire career has been about sitting in that middle place between trying to control an individual project or a programme of multiple interdependent projects, but also portraying the information upwards to those that are paying for it, those that are going to be using it, and ultimately those who pay my salary. So I'm very much from the business perspective today. I am not going to look at the technical aspect. I'm going to be looking at, well, where do you fit in the bigger picture? And with that context in mind, how do you need to do your job? How do you need to control individual projects? Does that suit you so far? Hopefully that was something similar to what was written in the spec. Right, so we've had a quick look at what project controls mean to us, the time, cost, quality, the idea of change management, the idea of successful delivery, being accountable. There's a lot about information, keeping something on track, effective project delivery. Can't disagree with any of that, actually. Hopefully, this presentation will bring it all together. I always think, whenever I start a presentation and I think, well, what am I talking about, I always put the definitions up because they help me. And I brought 3 definitions together today about control and project control because I thought there was something interesting in every aspect. First of all, I think the Business Dictionary definition of it being a management function, and a management function achieving defined goals, I think comes back to what some of you have said about effective project delivery. But I think the interesting thing is the 3 components that seem to be fairly common to the idea of management control. The setting your standards, which I think in our world, the standard is actually the plan, isn't it? We set the plan, that's the standard that we've got to meet. That's the standard for timekeeping, the standard for delivery, the standard for resource usage. We've got to measure our actual performance, and then we've got to take corrective action. I think it's quite interesting that we already get straight into we're clearly not going to stick to the plan. Henri Fayol, at the beginning of the last century, 1916, was doing his research, but one of the papers published in 1949. But his view, control consists of verifying whether everything occurs in conformity with the plan adopted, the instructions issued, and the principles established. Its object is to point out weaknesses and errors in order to rectify them and prevent recurrence. Well, for me, that tells me that was definitely last century, because I think that one of the things we must keep in mind is our overall environment. And we are now in a culture, we're all guilty of this as individuals, that we need a tremendous amount of positive stroking and telling how wonderful we are every morning. We're becoming of that generation and that nature. And so Faye was saying that it's there to point out weaknesses and errors. Yes, but I think in a project controls environment, we've also got to keep a very good grip on successes. I don't think you'll stay in your role that long if you only ever report the negative. I think that's a very interesting point we have to keep in mind. I need my positive information, my good news stories, as much as I need what's wrong. I don't want to be seen purely as a policing function that only ever criticises, because I know that in the wider picture, that will prevent people giving me the information that I need, escalating things to me, making me aware of things, because I am only ever that person, that function, that criticises. So I think we should take Faye with a large pinch of salt for this century and say, well, actually, it's the weaknesses and errors and the successes that we should be looking at. And finally, I thought best to sort of pull out the project controls definition, as we're all here today, that encompasses people, processes and tools used to plan, manage and mitigate cost and schedule issues and any risk events that impact the project. I like the fact that they've got people in there as well as the processes and tools. It's fairly fair. Now, putting it into a wider context, what on earth does project control really mean? I am looking, from a business perspective, for my control function to be the nerve centre. I certainly agree with this central point here about this source of information. What I'm looking for is, if I'm running a large project, if I am a programme manager of multiple interdependent projects, I need to know, before I can make other decisions, where we are, how we got here, where we've come from, where we're going next, how far we still have to travel, what else we still have to do, what actions we've taken to get where we are, and just as importantly, what actions we didn't take. I look for my controls function to be the source of, if you like, almost a mental source of change control. Because whenever we're doing change control, we are making decisions. Right, this hasn't gone according to plan, we're going to do this other thing instead. Well, that's fine. You've probably documented that. But what's really critical to me when the next issue comes up is that I've got somebody who's a good background source that says, and the reason we didn't do that last time was this. So it's that bigger picture of always understanding when we fixed a problem, we took a particular course of action, but it's just as valid to know why we didn't take the other possible courses of action, because we're probably going to be looking at those again when the next problem arises. I think I'm looking for an overall perspective on where are we and where should we be and what is going to happen next. I am looking for a predictive capability. I know that's terribly unfair, because if you were that good at predicting the future, you probably wouldn't be here. You would have bought a lottery ticket, a winning lottery ticket, and be sat on the beach somewhere in Barbados with a nice drink with a little umbrella in it. But I am looking for the use of brain power. I don't just want reporting, I probably said this in a meeting yesterday morning. I said to somebody, reporting is meaningless without commentary. Don't just send me a report and hope that I have got the time, the energy and the knowledge to interpret it the way you're interpreting it. I might not agree with your interpretation, but give me your commentary because it will give me a starting point. So I go back to the top list there. In terms of my commentary, absolutely vital. The controls information is, I can pull it out of any database often. The reason that I've got a controls function within my division, my department, is because I'm looking for people who can provide that, if you like, holistic care of the business overall. I'm looking for you to comment on and give me perspective about the project. And that overall, giving me a report of where we are right now, and tends to be that the reports I get tell me about where we are and where the gaps are for where we should be going, but tends to ignore all of the commentary about how the hell we got here. And giving me a quick list of the issues is fine, but also give me a quick list of the key successes. Because otherwise we do have a strong tendency to focus, particularly at board level, we have a tendency to focus on the negative. And that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if you start to look at only issues, you start to get into a very critical mindset. And all that ever comes down again from board level is criticism and a bit of poking about where people should improve, and not enough thanks. And going back to the environment we're all in these days, we like to be thanked, we like to be positively praised. So for me, the meaning of controls is much bigger than a list of data. It is about what it's really telling me. Now, you've got sessions here today on all of these things. I just wanted to put this up because I'm the opening speaker, just to make sure you can see the bigger picture here. There is all of the information about the planning, scheduling and reporting. And I'm hoping today that I'll give you some perspective on how you think about the information you're getting. There's a stream on earned value analysis. There's a lovely stream on cost engineering and estimating. I can't add up to save my life. I'm not that great with a calculator. I see figures and just think, oh, just tell me what it means. So I'm in awe of those of you that are going to the cost engineering, and also some interesting stuff on risk and delay claims and change of control. So just putting that up there, I was asked to put that slide in just to remind you of everything that's happening. But let's take everything that's happening in the world of project controls and look at this picture. This picture tells me two things. The first point that I want to make is about what projects fit into, and several of you have got ahead of the curve, which I'm really pleased about, because I want to talk about change. We might have a project there in the bottom that's a project in its own right. Project leads to some kind of change. After all, we move from the left-hand side, business as usual, to the new right-hand side, business as usual. Whatever it is you are building or creating or reorganising, whatever it is your project is doing, it is doing it for a reason. The organisation who's paying for it expects to move to some new operating environment, expects to get better revenue, expects to get greater value from their current customer base, or expects to increase their customer base, or expects to reduce their costs. Listening to Justin King at 6:30 this morning at the Stock Exchange talking about the 6.6% rise in Sainsbury's profits, and underlying that were the multitude of projects that he has put in place in the last 12 months to reduce their cost base by 50 million. It was pretty clear last year that Justin's key thing on his business as usual, looking at the recessionary environment, was that the left-hand side business as usual had too high a cost base, and he would implement multiple projects to move himself over here so that he's still got the same sort of revenue, he's still got the same competitor base with Tesco and Asda, but he's working off a lower cost base. So if you like, his version of a cheaper Sainsbury's is what he was looking for. So this change that we're looking for is absolutely crucial, and I think sometimes we forget that when we are so busy trying to construct the project and think about the deliverables specifically, and how we are going to get those deliverables on time, on budget, to the right scope. Absolutely essential that we do it, but we can't get those deliverables right. We can't get the requirements right at the very beginning of the project unless we consider this picture and we start to think, yeah, but what is the current business as usual that I'm doing this project in the middle of, and what will be the new business environment when it delivers, and what is the change that it's supposed to contribute to. So I need to be thinking about the change aspect for everything that I do. It's the same as if it was the one above with a programme. Multiple interdependent projects lead to overall probably a bigger change, but it's the same thing. every project delivery, what changes will come about as a result of this. So we need to be thinking in terms of wider than the project life cycle itself. We need to be thinking about the changes. And in fact, probably can't see that very well at all, but we've got our project life cycle, typical concept, definition, development, test and close. What I've overlaid sort of halfway through this is the idea of the change life cycle. We've got an audience that is interested in using what our projects will create. Our audience are going to go through this transition from what they do now to what they do later using whatever you've created. If it's a new building, we are looking at the transition of individuals who are being asked to move from building A to building B. The psychological disruption that that brings about. If it's a new product or service, we're asking our entire sales force to learn something new, learn to persuade customers to buy something new. We're asking our customer services units to service something new. Whatever it is we're producing, at the end of the day, they are going to go through this transition curve. And I think in project controls information, although we tend to focus on the overall deliverable, we want to get to the end of that project life cycle. What we've really got to look for is we've got to have a look at, in getting there, what's going to happen at the other end? How on earth do we get, how can I provide information? How can I provide good news stories? How can I keep people up to date with all the changes that we've made on the specifications and requirements? How can I make sure that I don't just service the project line, but also service people who are impacted by the project, who need this information to help them be motivated enough to take on board what's being delivered, adopt what's being delivered, and start to use what's being delivered. So I think we need to recognise what's going on. I'm going to take a couple of minutes to talk you through that transition curve, because I think that recognition of how our customers, our users are feeling and behave can help you think through, well, how does that change some of my reporting? Are there additional reports or additional pieces of information that I can actually be producing on the business side, talking much more about the business value and uses that could be useful to our customers? First and foremost, it is only when people have been through what looks on this diagram like really is a productivity dip. It is only when they've fully adopted our deliverables that benefits are realised. If I am delivering a large-scale system, on the first day that people are asked to start putting data into the new system and start using this new system, we do not get any business benefits. We have got chaos. People are forgetting how to log on. People can't remember how to use certain screens. They can't remember the functionality that they were shown in the user training hundreds of times. Their productivity falls, and in fact, from the moment the project goes live, it looks like a bit of a disaster. Yeah? Because naturally we will go slower. Our productivity falls at this point. This is one of the first questions I always ask about the delivery time. I've always got two project delivery dates in my head. I've got the project delivery date that I will use to motivate the project team, make sure that the delivery is actually, especially if I've got hundreds of contractors working on something, that I can deliver in the shortest possible time to give me the lowest possible cost base. That's critical to me. I've got to deliver within a certain time frame. But the other delivery date that I'm interested in, and they don't always coincide, is the delivery date that is most appropriate, most useful for those that are expected to adopt what we've delivered. There is absolutely no point putting in a brand new financial system into an organisation in early December whose year end is the 31st of December. If we think that we naturally get a productivity dip when we learn a new system, we certainly don't want to have it in the time when we are at our busiest. So a recognition, a very practical recognition that if I cast back, my project doesn't always start from the perspective of, if it's an 18-month project, I don't always think, well, actually, we don't need to start it for 2 months because our live date should actually be February, not December. I don't think like that. We get the project started as quickly as possible, don't we? We use the smallest number of resources we possibly get away with. We work as quickly as we can to deliver something. But there might be some kind of gap between completion and go live, and that's never a bad thing, is the first thing I say. So this productivity dip is partly confusion, people taking on new instructions, learning new things, a new way of working. What we're really saying is that we're forcing people, the people that should be most excited about our project, we're actually giving them a problem, because at the moment they have some automatic ability in the way in which they currently do their work. So if you're in the finance department with a new system, you don't think much about it in the morning. You go in, you log on, you pull off the reports you've always pulled off, you load up the spreadsheet you've always loaded up, you enter in the data that you always load in. You don't think much. You have unconscious competence. I'm not saying you have much competence, but you have unconscious competence. It's fairly automatic. You don't have to think much. As soon as we give somebody a deliverable from the project, big new system, ask them to move into a new building, whatever it is, we are making them very consciously aware that it's new. They don't know how it works. I know they've been on the training, still. So we've given them conscious incompetence. That's why we've got the productivity dip, because people are actually very aware of what they don't know. And when you're very aware of what you don't know, what do? Do you go as fast as you normally go? No. You slow down. You take a bit more notice of the stuff around you. Even when I'm going on a new route to wherever I'm working, you know, I'm consciously aware, hey, something the other day, I have never been to this particular city. Okay, I'm going to go a little bit slower. I'm not going to hurtle around town like I normally do in London, just grabbing a cab with 10 minutes between meetings. I'm going to give myself 45 minutes to get from A to B because I've never been there before. I'm going to slow down. I am consciously incompetent. Now, the next time I visit that city, the next time I log on to that system, it will be not as unfamiliar. So I will get some kind of conscious competence. And if I carry on visiting that city or using that system, I will eventually become as comfortable with it as I was with my old way. I recognise the system, I become unconsciously competent again. In other words, I come right back up the other side of this curve and I start to be able to realise the business benefits that the project all that way ago was set up to deliver. The business case for the project assumed, on the benefit side, it assumed so much about my willingness to engage with a new system, move to a new building, change my entire commute. It assumed my willingness to practice in order to move from incompetence to competence. Because that's really what you're asking your users, your audience, your customers to do. You're asking them to put in a huge amount of effort, because what you've delivered is only any use if they use it. To use it, they've got to practice using it. They've got to put in all of the effort. So effectively, what we do in project management is we make people feel incompetent. Starting to get a feeling for why project managers aren't always the most popular people on the planet? Yeah? That point of delivery. How many project managers recognise the scenario where I say that the users see me as a source of problems, not as a solution? They don't welcome my project with open arms. You know, they see me as, oh God, not more. I often referee between the heads of project management and the heads of, it's often the chief operating officer, who is at war with project management, because actually actually in organisations, many of the projects we deliver are having to be picked up and run by all of the operational staff. So the Chief Operating Officer is constantly battling off this productivity dip, because here's a new system, here's a new process, here's a new building, here's a new something. It's a constant stream of new things that have to be adopted. How's that feel so far? Does that make sense? So my biggest issue in a very straightforward look at controlling of project information is really who is my audience, and I think keeping this in mind is very important. I'd also like to say something about my wider audience, because I'm asking you to think about the impact on change and how that might change some of the things you decide to report on, some of the information that you decide to collect from various projects. But I should also think that we should look at our overall hierarchical audience in the world of project management. Because at the end of the day, in my project controls function, I may be working for the project manager. So I'm within my project environment. I'm having a think about the fact that I need to know every aspect of the project. I need to know the cost of all my resources. I need to know who's doing what. I need to know what we're spending in terms of suppliers. I need to know what contracts we're entering into, where the break clauses are, overall what the tax implications are for some of the things we're purchasing. So I'm very much thinking only about that project and getting a grip on that project. And my audience in that regard is project manager, project sponsor, as well hopefully as those that are going to use it. But if my project is part of a programme, then I have another step up, a wider audience if you like. Because what I'm looking at there is that my information should not be created in isolation. I don't want somebody with a blinkered approach who is creating information about the success of their individual project in isolation from all the other projects that are part of the programme. I think we tend to have project information goes up to perhaps the programme manager who's managing the multiple interdependent projects, but I'm saying we should be building our relationships to all the other projects. I think that in controlling one project, we should not be ignorant of how other projects are being controlled and build that bigger picture so that we can put contextual information up as well. We're doing X, Y and Z. We're having problems with A, B and C and putting it in the context of what other projects are doing, the impact on other projects. So if we're part of a programme, we have a bigger audience already. And finally, organisations are starting to manage portfolios of projects, programmes and change initiatives. So again, we may have a bigger audience. We may be reporting through an overall portfolio office that may have a direct line to the board. Now this might be through strategy committees, steering groups or whatever, but I think it's very important for us that we think about the immediate project audience, project manager, project sponsor, but where we sit in the bigger audience as well. My general rule of thumb, as I tend to sort of go up at these different audiences, is that with my project manager, it is very much some of the things you put down here. Deliver on time, on budget, the agreed scope, the agreed quality, efficiently deploying the resources. And that's absolutely core to what we do. It's essential information. But I think if we start to go up the audience level, my rule of thumb tends to be that the next level up, the next level up, the next level up, my information, my detail gets less, but my context information gets more, if you like. So I'm not going to give a blow-by-blow account of everything that's happening to Programme Manager, but I am going to widen the context information and say, and the impact on other projects is these things. If I'm escalating it up through a portfolio office, then again, my project information becomes more summary, but my context information information should become wider this time. How does what we're achieving on this particular project contribute to the achievement of the wider strategic objectives? So I think you've got to keep a rule of thumb in mind here, because the further up we get, the more business information is needed, the greater the business value of the information, the less I need detailed blow-by-blow account of individual projects. I think this is a very important point as we look at our context overall of who is my audience and what could they do with the information. What I'm looking for personally from a project controls function, as I said at the beginning, I'm looking for commentary as much as data. And what I'm asking you to think about this morning is how you can improve your commentary and how you can look at the bigger picture. Number one, what can you do to give commentary to those who are your users and your customers who are getting prepared to implement whatever it is that you're creating? But also, how can you help the world of project management become less of a problem and more of a solution? By making sure that you escalate your information appropriately through the business management levels, so that you give greater and greater levels of context, benefits related, business value related information, so that we can portray project management as what it really is, which is something that delivers tremendous value to our organisations. We create something new and we enable our organisations to move from one business environment which they are no longer satisfied with. Whether it's a business environment that they think today has got too high a cost base, or too few products, or is not fleet of foot enough in selling to its customers. Whatever it is, somewhere at the board level, there is a discontent with the current business as usual, which has led to these projects. Even to the extent of, there is a discontent with the amount of regeneration in East London, that is why we'll use the Olympics for. You know, that kind of business environment, that environment we didn't think was acceptable anymore, and then we want to move to the new business environment. So I put down the challenge to you. What can you do with all of the data available to you to help to answer some of those bigger questions and inspire people that those working on projects are not just a cost base? Because I'm a project manager of old and I'm kind of sick of being seen as a bloody great problem and somebody who spends a load of money on a load of people running around and I've absolutely no clue what they do, says a COO. I want to be seen as somebody who is actually helping the business achieve, ultimately, I'm here to achieve strategic objectives. And I know sometimes that's kind of hard to see on one individual project how your little project might suit something, the bigger picture. But just keep in mind, you are helping that organisation move from its current unsatisfactory business environment to something new, exciting, and that can deliver all the benefits that the executives are hoping for. So you've got a real business value. You've got to make sure that you're reporting, the way in which you portray your information, the commentary you give me, the answers you provide, even before I've asked for them, actually contributes to me being able to say, as a project manager, or as a project sponsor, or as a program manager, or as a portfolio manager, this project is going to deliver these benefits and contributes to this objective in this way, and that my users, my customers are ready for it, and I am helping them to prepare for its implementation. Does that help? Does that help? I think I'm pretty much on time, so thank you very much. Again, there's nobody here from the conference to say what happens to you next. So sit tight and maybe Anil will come and join you. But thank you very much.